Now we're going to move into the chapter 15, the autonomic nervous system. Well, in previous classes, we have talked about the peripheral nervous system, and we have mainly focused on this somatic section of the peripheral nervous system that controls the voluntary movement of skeletal muscle. In this chapter, the goal is to study the other branch, the one that is in charge of these involuntary movements. So the first thing that we're going to do is compare the structure, to examine the structure and function of this autonomic nervous system. So here we're going to study the other branch. And what we're going to do is to compare the somatic one that we previously talked to this autonomic. Then we are going to study, okay, we previously know that neurotransmitters are very important. So let's study what is the role of neurotransmitters in this autonomic nervous system. And finally, we're going to focus on study the two branch of autonomic nervous system, that is the sympathetic and also the parasympathetic. So let's start. So let's make a map of all the things that we have learned in the previous classes. So here we talk about the nervous system, and we say that the nervous system can be divided into two, into the central nervous system that is composed of the brain and the spinal cord, and the second, that is the peripheral system, the peripheral nervous system that include all the nerves that connect to the central nervous system, to the muscles and organs. And this one can also be subdivided. So it can be subdivided. So here 2.1 and 2.2. So the peripheral nervous system can be subdivided into the somatic, that is, as I said before, is involved with the voluntary movements of the skeletal muscle, while the autonomic is involved in the involuntary movements of the smooth muscles, like the one that we have, for example, in our stomach, in our intestine, and glands and organs. And this one can be also subdivided in two main components. So this 2.21, that is the sympathetic, and the parasympathetic that we will talk in the following slides. Okay, now that we remember that there is this peripheral nervous system, I'm going to try to explain with two examples what is the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So here, imagine that you're playing baseball. So somebody gave you a ball, and you need to see how heavy it is. You need to look at the direction where you're going to throw it. You need to see how rough or smooth is the ball. So you will have a lot of sensory fibers, that they will send messages, and your brain will process all that information to later activate motor fibers to target, to throw the ball in a specific place and at different specific speed, and do all those things. And all these movements are voluntary. On the other hand, your nervous system work very different. If you, for example, are camping and you see that close to your tent there is a bear, in that case there is your sympathetic system activate this fight or flight response. So in this case, you have to escape, And so you, at that point, different from the when you play baseball here, a lot of things happen involuntarily. So you are not thinking about, I need to increase my breathing. So also my heart also increase the rate, and I reduce my digestion. So I maximize the blood that goes to my muscles, and to uh, maximize the speed that I have to escape. You don't think about those things. Those things your body does automatically. And also something that you do is like, after all these things happen, and you cannot run for hours and hours like that. If not, you will die. When the problem has disappeared, later your body automatically will say, you know what? Now I can slow down my heartbeat. I can slow down my breathing. There is not an alarm anymore. There is no danger. So now I can activate again the digestion, so my body recover. I can rest, and I can be, so I am okay again. So that's the first one. is, as I said, is the sympathetic division that creates this fight or flight response. And the second one is the parasympathetic, that is the complementary to the sympathetic. And here, this is called the rest and digest stimulus. And if you see all these two, the second one, the example of the bear, and when you have escape, both of them are involuntary functions, and in those cases, the you have motor and sensory functions that are connected to your organs. Okay, so remember I told you that the peripheral system, nervous system, has the somatic system that work with voluntary actions, while the autonomic system work with involuntary actions, and it can be divided into two, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So I told you three pieces of information. I told you that the somatic nervous system is part of the peripheral nervous system and is associated with the voluntary body movements, similar to what I said with the baseball ball. I told you that it's composed of nerve fibers that in this case they control voluntary actions, and the function is they convey sensory information, similar to when you're looking at the ball, sensing the ball, all of that input information that they come from the skin, skeletal muscle, and joint, and they turn it into a motor response where you use these voluntary actions. On the other hand, I told you that this automatic nervous system, or ANS for short, will control involuntary process of the body, and I told you that it could be, for example, heart rate, digestion, and breathing. So, and it's divided into two: the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and these are the two main components that we will talk about. I also told you that the sympathetic division is responsible for the fight and flight response. So if you're going to fight or you're going to run away, you are going to have many changes in your body that include, for example, your pupils will dilate, you are going to flash, or your skin will turn or will be pale. You are definitely going to have a change in your heartbeat and breathing, and you can even start trembling. So, in other words, I tell you that when this system is activated, it's because you're under danger or stress and your work start working faster. So you can either fight or you can run away. I also told you that the autonomic nervous system also have another division, that is the parasympathetic division, that it has the opposite function. Yeah, while one is on, the other one has to be off, and the opposite will happen. So this one will be responsible for the rest and digest mode. This one will happen when you are relaxed, when you are not in danger anymore, and in this case your body will work more slowly, and so we can be able to rest because we are breathing slowly, we are starting digestion, and we are recovering from that dangerous situation. And again, here this is important, that these are two complementary. Both, you cannot be all the time resting, or you cannot be all the time feeling in danger. If not, you will get sick. Yeah, both have to be complementary, and we have to be turned on and off constantly. Now we're going to talk about the third division of the autonomic nervous system, and that is the enteric nervous system, or enteric plexuses. And what is the enteric plexuses? Are neurons that are lining in your digestive tract. So if you remember, you have muscles, yeah, that some of them are longitudinal, some of them are circular, that are lining your gastrointestinal system, and they are very important because they produce contractions and also relaxation. Yeah, all this contraction of muscles that are very important for the digestion. However, those contractions are not controlled by the brain or the spinal cord. Yeah, they have neurons that are innervating, millions of neurons that are innervating those muscles, but they are not controlled by the brain. Yeah, they are controlled by this enteric plexus. Of course, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic can regulate this enteric plexus or enteric nervous system, but some people call this enteric system as a second brain. Yeah, so they work independently and they are very important for the digestion. So let's summarize a few of the things that I told you. So I told you that we have in the autonomic nervous system a third division. So in addition to the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, we have the third division that are these enteric plexuses or enteric nervous system. And I told you that they are located, yeah, they are lining the gastrointestinal system, and very important that they operate independently of the brain and the spinal cord. They can, of course, be regulated by the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, but they work independently of the brain. And the specific location, they are extend most of the digestive canal, and the main function that they have is to directly control the gastrointestinal system. Now we're going to talk about the structure. Again, we're going to talk about this in more detail in chapter 24. But here I just want to tell you that these enteric plexuses, they can be divided into two groups. One that are the submucosal that are located here, and the other ones that are the myenteric here. Both have different functions. So, for example, the submucosal is involved in local conditions and control the local secretion, absorption, and control also the muscle movements. In addition, the myenteric plexus increases the tone of the gut, the velocity of the contraction, and the intensity of each one of those contractions. So, finally, to finish, I wanted to tell you the last section of the enteric plexuses and is related to the type of neurons that they have. So they contain the three type of neurons that we have been talking since the beginning. They have sensory neurons that here they're represented in purple that are attached to the epithelium, the interneurons that are in between both the sensory neurons and the motor neurons. And if you see here, the motor neurons are the ones that are in contact with the muscles. So let's briefly talk about some information that appear in your textbook about each one of these neurons. For example, in the enteric sensory neurons, they are in charge of monitor the stretching of its walls, as well as monitor the chemical changes within the digestive canal. So the second group is this group here, the yellow ones that are the interneurons, and as the picture shows, they are in contact with both neurons, so they will integrate the information from sensory neurons, and they will provide an input to the motor neurons that are the ones that do the contractions. So finally, the enteric motor neurons, the ones that are in contact with the muscles, they will be controlling the contraction of the digestive canal and also control the secretion of the glands to the digestive system. And again, we will talk more about this. I know it was very quick, but we will talk about that in more detail in the chapter 24 next semester. In this slide, we will start comparing the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. And in the somatic nervous system, we know that it includes sensory neurons and also it includes also motor neurons. The sensory neurons will carry the impulse from the sensory organs like your skin, like your eyes, your ears, and the information will move to the central nervous system, to the brain or the spinal cord. And in the case of the motor neurons, they carry the motor impulses from the central nervous system, they could be brain, spinal cord, to specific effectors like the muscles in your body. And the sensory neurons are related to different senses like touch, pain, temperature, equilibrium, etc. On the other hand, the autonomic nervous system works slightly different. In the autonomic nervous system, on the other hand, they receive input but from sensory receptors that are located in organs, blood vessels, muscles, and even other sections of the nervous system. Yeah, so in other hands, here the sensory receptor will be very different as well as the responses. So, for example, here the motor response will include, for example, changes in the pupil that don't have that have involuntary control, salivation, the heart rate it will change, the for example the blood flow can change, and there are many other examples. So as you can see, the somatic and the autonomic system, although both use sensory and motor neurons, those ones, the sensory reception come from different regions, and the motor response also goes uh, to different regions of the body. Now let's continue comparing these two parts of the nervous system. So in the case of the somatic nervous system, here you can see a neuron, yeah, that is going to extend from the central nervous system. Yeah, so here you see the spinal cord and the soma here. Then you see the axon here, and in the axon you see layers of myelin that at the end you're going to this axon is going to secrete acetylcholine that is going to stimulate the effector. In this case, the effector is the skeletal muscle. Okay, so this is what happened in the somatic nervous system. Now I'm going to show you that in the autonomic nervous system is slightly different, the neuronal circuit. So different from the somatic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system has not only one, but has two neurons in a series. And this is very common in many autonomic motor pathways. So here you see that the first neuron is going to be attached to the central nervous system. So the soma will be there. Then they will be here the axon that have this represent this yellow rectangle represent myelin. So there will be myelin, and then they attach to the second neuron that it will be the autonomic ganglion. And this autonomic ganglion, if you remember, that ganglion is a cell body in the peripheral nervous system, and you can find it in cluster or you can find it like this. Then the second neuron here is going to stimulate, yeah, target tissue, both in the interaction between the first one and the second one. Here you're going to have a neurotransmitter, and in the second one and the target tissue, you're also going to have generally a neurotransmitter. In addition to that, the name of the neurons depend on the location relative to the autonomic ganglion. So if they are before, they will be called preganglionic neurons, and if they are after, yeah, so here this one is after, it will be called postganglionic neurons. So now let's recap the few things that I told you. So I told you that in most of the autonomic motor pathways consist of two motor neurons that are in series, and this is one difference with the somatic autonomic nervous system. I also show you that the name of the neurons depend on the location relatively to the autonomic ganglion. So for example here, this one will be called the preganglionic neuron, and This preganglionic neuron, the cell body, is going to be in the central nervous system. So here you can see the cell body. And on the other hand, the axon is going to extend to the autonomic ganglion and is going to be covered by myelin that will extend from the central nervous system to the ganglion. I also told you that the second neuron is called postganglionic neuron and that the cell body is located in the autonomic ganglion, so here, and the axon doesn't have myelin and it extends from the ganglion to the effector. Finally, just as a reminder, a ganglion is a collection of neuronal cell bodies that are located in the peripheral nervous system. If it was in the central nervous system, it will be called a nuclei. Now I'm going to show you very similar information, but I'm going to show you the specific taking into using the diagram from your textbook. Now we're going to use the information from your textbook. So here is the diagram, and here your textbook show you this is the preganglionic neuron. And as we talked before, here you will have the cell body in the central nervous system. And here, as we said before, the action will be myelinated. And this is the example of a sympathetic preganglionic neuron. Here you will find the acetylcholine that they will be the neurotransmitter that will be located in the autonomic. Mhm. Mhm. So this is the diagram, a little bit more complex than the one that I show you, but it's the same idea. So I already show you that in yellow there will be a preganglionic neuron, and here in blue there will be a postganglionic neuron. Here the first one will have the cell body in the central nervous system, while this one will have the central cell body in the autonomic ganglion. I also told you that the axon of this one will have myelin, while the action of the second one have no lack of myelin. In addition of that, I already told you that you will have two areas where you will have neurotransmitter. In this case, the neurotransmitter in the from the first neuron to the second neuron, it will be acetylcholine, here ACH, and here the second one here is norepinephrine. And here the effectors. So here they could be different type of organs like gland, the cardiac muscle of the heart, smooth muscles, and etc. Now I'm going to show you a small change that happened in some sympathetic division. So this is the schematic that we just talked in a second, and here what is going to happen is that we are not going to have the ganglion. What we're going to have in this case is a specialized cell that is called chromaffin cell. Yeah, this chromaffin cell can be located above the kidneys in the adrenal glands, and they will be replacing the ganglion. And in this alternative, where we have this chromaffin cell, there will be a difference in the neurotransmitter, while in all somatic motor cells, you will have this acetylcholine. In the chromaffin cells, instead, you're going to have epinephrine and norepinephrine. Your textbook also give you a diagram for the parasympathetic division, but it's very similar. You're also going to have a preganglionic neuron, and also you're going to have a postganglionic neuron. Here in the preganglionic, you're going to have the soma in the central nervous system, and in the postganglionic, you're going to have it in the ganglia. The axon of the preganglionic would have myelin, the other one will not have myelin. And again, the neurotransmitter, as we said before, is going to be acetylcholine, and the effectors here will be similar to the first example. It will be different organs of the body.